It's Monday, December 5th, 2017 at 1 o'clock Eastern Time, and this is Admissions Live. I'm your host, Adam Castro, and on today's broadcast, we're talking about admission careers, breaking in, bouncing around, and blossoming with higher ed thought leaders from the EM chat community. This is a timely episode, I believe, since we're moving into New Year's resolution season, and I don't think any of us out there don't consider where we are in our career at that point of year. So I think we're gonna have a great discussion today, a very lively discussion with people that live and breathe higher ed professional development. So it's gonna be fantastic. Admissions Live is part of the Higher Ed Live network. Our episodes offer you direct access to the best and brightest minds in education. Be a part of our live broadcast by sharing your knowledge. Participate in today's discussion by tweeting us using the hashtag HigherEdLive. All of our episodes are free and easy to access in the video archives at higheredlive.com, or take Higher Ed Live with you and on the go by subscribing to the podcast. Today's episode is made possible by Chegg Enrollment Services, connecting colleges and universities with college-bound students who are researching schools online. Chegg uses a platform that includes the most popular college search sites, helping you save over 90% of the costs of traditional inquiry-generating methods. Email outreach@chegg.com to schedule a free consultation. Higher Ed Live is produced by M. Stoner, a marketing and communications firm that works with higher education institutions on branding, strategy, web design, and more. Again, I want to welcome my guests here today. We really have three topics we're going to tackle when we talk about careers in admissions, and they're kind of breaking this up into three sections. And that'll be breaking in, bouncing around, and then blossoming. To help me do that today, I have four amazing guests that I know very well, and I'm very excited to have them on. First, I have Jenny L. Struther, Dean of Enrollment at University of the Incarnate World in San Antonio, Texas, and co-founder of EMChat. Alex Williams, Senior Program Manager at Technolutions and co-founder of EMChat. Carlos Cano, Assistant Director of Admissions, Undergraduate Admission at William Patterson University in New Jersey. And Brian Swete, Assistant Director of Recruitment at Stevens Institute in Hoboken, New Jersey. Welcome, guys. I want to jump right into it, and again, anybody following along, please use the hashtag HigherEdLive. You want to ask our panelists questions over the course of the episode. I'll be monitoring Twitter, and we'll certainly get your question in front of the right person as we go forward. But the first things first, I definitely want to turn this to Jenny L. and Alex as co-founders of EMChat. If we can get a little bit of background, I don't think everybody may not know about EMChat. What is it? How did it come about? And how does it help admission pros? Jenny L., why don't you start?
Hi, everybody. So I'm Jenny L., and EMChat stands for Enrollment Management Chat, and it is a community of enrollment management professionals who come together every Thursday night and 24/7 really, but scheduled Thursday nights at 8 p.m. Central to discuss enrollment management topics. How it started was about 5 years ago. I was finishing up my master's and was surrounded by a bunch of other academics and scholar practitioners really who were always discussing enrollment management topics. And I was really, as I graduated, I didn't have that opportunity to discuss those topics. And so I was really looking for another platform to do that. And Twitter was the perfect platform for that. And then I'll hand it over to Alex to let everybody know how it went from there.
Because it all started with a tweet. Right? Yeah, so I had simultaneously pretty much just finished up my master's program as well. And I had fallen into a job that was in a totally unrelated industry, right? I was working as a government contractor in DC doing like continuity and emergency preparedness, which is like, could not be more distant from enrollment management. And, but I knew that my passion was really in enrollment management. And so I wanted to find a way kind of also to kind of have conversations that I had been having because I'd been working in the admissions office, throughout kind of my undergraduate and graduate careers. So I put a tweet out that was like, this is kind of like when Twitter chats were also really kind of starting to take off and forming. And so I put a tweet out that was just like, hey, does anyone know if there's an admissions focused chat? And then bing, there's Jenny L. No, there's not. Let's start one. And that's kind of like, that was the impetus for that. And that's really kind of how we really kicked it off. And then literally, like we were emailing back and forth a couple times, and then we had our first chat like a couple weeks after that. So it really kind of came to fruition. I don't think either of us really expected it to grow much beyond kind of like a conversation every Thursday night, but really has just morphed into a really phenomenal, fantastic community. So it's been very rewarding.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, being a part of it myself, I can say that I think Alex and Janielle are my first two followers, people that I followed on Twitter, and it's, you know, exploded since then. And I was definitely late to the Twitter game, but I was happy to stumble upon EM Chat and become part of that community. I think it'd be great in terms of background to kind of get an idea of how you guys broke into the admission field. You know, was it dumb luck like me? Was there a chance encounter? Was there an experience that kind of pointed you in this direction? And let's start off with Carlos.
Hey everyone, so I am a student ambassador / tour guide turned admissions professional. It really all just kind of came to a head at the time here. I work at my alma mater, so at the time, the vice president of enrollment management kind of asked me that $1 million question, what do you want to do when you grow up? Didn't have a clue because I was so involved on the college campus, had no real thoughts about what was going to be next. And so, you know, his proposition to me was, well, if you like college so much and you're having such a good time here, why don't you think about working at a college or a university? And I was like, wow, I never had really thought of that, as kind of obvious as it was, but I guess I kind of took it for granted. And from there, just kind of found out as much as I could from the people that I worked with in the admissions office here at William Patterson. 2010 rolls along, and I'm an admissions counselor at my alma mater. So that's kind of how I broke in.
Oh, thanks. How about you, Brian?
There we go. I was a little different. I started in basically doing my master's work in marketing. And I wanted to go kind of like Alex in that government side of things. I had some interviews and internships lined up. And unfortunately, at the end of doing those, I didn't like it. So I actually went back to the beginning of when I was admitted to my undergraduate course load and spoke with my admissions counselor at the time and kind of reviewed everything and kind of was explaining how I'm not really interested in what I was doing. And he always brought up the idea of I'm always comfortable talking to groups of people. You know, I've seen a lot of universities on tour with my brothers and helping them find their universities, and that probably admissions would be a good fit for me, and to look more into that. And it kind of, I didn't really think about it at first, and I kind of, you know, went on some interviews and really kind of solidified my position of where I wanted to be in admissions, based on that conversation with my older admissions counselor, who got me into Wilkes University, which was kind of interesting in its fact. But yeah, that kind of started everything. I knew I wanted to speak to people, but didn't know what forum, and this was the perfect opportunity for me to kind of blend those two areas together.
It always comes back to the original admission counselor. We're getting ahead of ourselves, but that'll be certainly a point that we discuss. And before I throw it to Alex, I want to make sure that everybody understands that we're already getting Twitter comments about Alex's view, and it may soon be its own hashtag Alex's view. But Alex, can you let us know a little bit about your background and how you broke in?
And how I ended up with this view. So I, like I just said, I worked in admissions as a student worker, as an undergraduate. And then when I did my MBA, I worked in advancement actually. And at the end of that, kind of there was like thinking about maybe working in advancement, but then I felt like, no, I definitely want to be back in admissions. But there were no jobs on my campus kind of at that time. And so that's how I kind of fell into my other thing. But really what sparked my interest and kind of passion for this would have been the counselors for sure that I worked with when I was a student worker. I would say I fell into that job, but I fell into it as a student. And then that just sparked it from that point on. But really what kind of drew me in was like my job, like I love to be a consultant. And so like to be able to mix that with enrollment management, what sparked that was my freshman year, Noel Levitz was on campus. And they were doing focus groups with students and talking to us. And I thought, this seems like it's a really cool job. And I think that's what really kind of sparked it for me, in addition to the counselors. So.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you're here because, you know, you have the kind of the other side of the field that isn't touched on all that much. I mean, everybody thinks about working in admissions and working on a college campus, but there's this whole other side this consulting world and certainly this third party world of companies that we can partner with. Janelle, how about you?
So the way that I got here is a little different. So I spent I was a collegiate athlete, and I spent the first 10 years of my career coaching collegiate volleyball. And when I was ready to hang up my whistle, I was trying to find the right, spot for me. I knew I wanted to stay in higher ed. And, as a coach, you're kind of everything. You're the admissions counselor, you're the financial aid counselor, you're the dorm mom from way back in the day. I know, you're not supposed to say dorm anymore, but, it was a really good fit for me. But overall, the reason why, not because I knew all those aspects of higher ed, but it was, I was able to use my strategic, kind of data analysis that I used when I was coaching, and statistical analysis. And so it turned out to be a great fit for me, and I've really, really enjoyed it. And it's just as stressful as coaching, and you build teams, and so it was a really good fit for me.
I think that's a great segue into my next question, and this is probably the most overused line in admission counseling, but nobody goes to school to be an admission counselor. There's no bachelor's and master's track to break into this field per se. So I think people are exposed to it in many different ways. Jenny was exposed to it through athletics, Carlos and Alex through ambassador programs, and just being involved at the undergraduate level. And I think that's really interesting. Everybody kind of has a different background in that. So I think it'd be great to get your thoughts on, for someone trying to break into the field, what do they need to know? I mean, what are the things that they need to experience, or just kind of the ins and outs of the field that they should know before trying to jump right in? And Jenny, I want to go back to you, and just so you can talk a little bit about it at the dean level, and what you're looking for out of potential, candidates for entry-level jobs.
Yeah, so there's something that I've heard a lot of people say this, and it's so true as far as somebody who wants to come in and work in admissions. And you may not have any experience. You may not have been a student ambassador. I can coach those skills. I can't coach the mindset. And the mindset to succeed in admissions is a growth mindset. Understand that you're going to be learning a lot about higher ed, but a lot of the different departments. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And so, when I think about people who are looking to break into higher ed in general, the thing that I would say is to try not to listen to or believe in the preconceived notions that are surrounded by a career in admissions. Be open to the position, and when you are looking to break into higher ed, I highly, highly recommend admissions. You'll learn a lot of skills.
I think that's right. And I think, coming from my own background, I had no connection, to a college campus. And, I kind of fell into admissions while working for a nonprofit that did some dealings with the institution I'm currently at. And 13 years later, I'm still there, and I love what I do. And I think there's certain attributes that kind of really make this a very interesting and challenging field at the same time. And I think if you don't fall in love with those attributes, those are the people that have problems in breaking into the field. One is the competitive nature, but also the interactivity with different people, and kind of the breakneck speed in which we work. And I like to tell people, I give them the 3-month test run, and after 3 months, you either know that you love it and this is going to be your thing, or you're looking to get out the doors as quickly as possible. And unfortunately, that's very often the case. I want to turn to Brian because I want to get you're still kind of up and coming in the field, kind of making your moves right now. So what type of advice would you give an aspiring admission pro?
Yeah, I definitely came in and had the ability to kind of learn and not, I don't want to say I sat back for a little bit, but I didn't have that kind of, like Carlos and being that tour guide and being the ambassador of the school. I was very active at my university, but I wasn't involved in that. I was a resident assistant and stuff along those lines. So I had to learn very quickly coming to Stevens what the school offers and kind of get roped in and kind of understand the culture here. So I had to learn that very quickly. But moving forward, now that I feel like I have that solid foundation, what I did, I reached out to every avenue possible through NACAC, through NJACAC. I think I tweeted Carlos a couple times to say how to get more involved in things, and just kind of started to branch out and not kind of hold anything back and really kind of say, hey, if this is what I want to do with my career, how do I get more involved? Who do I got to go to? What are the things I got to do to stay involved and stay up to the current climate of what's going on in the world of higher ed? So just being able to be comfortable in reaching out. And I think in today's world, not a lot of people want to reach out and say, I want help. I look forward to learning more. I need help in that aspect of it. So being able to kind of break free from that and learn how to reach out to people and kind of use them as a shoulder to help guide you and get you to that next step is one of the things that was a valuable lesson for me moving forward. And being able to definitely travel by yourself, being out there on the road, and I was one of the kids, if I didn't have friends to go to the cafeteria, I wasn't eating lunch that day. So being able to go out on the road by yourself and get a meal and go back to the high school and to keep that positivity up is definitely one of those things that you learn on the road. But being able to be open and honest with yourself, definitely helps you advance in this field pretty quickly. But it's definitely one of those cool fields where you learn a lot about yourself in the first couple months.
I think you made a great point about getting involved with organizations outside of your campus. I think a lot of people breaking into the field kind of get sucked into their school and their territory and forget that, there's a larger community out there. And I think even for me, I mean, being at, part of administration, you kind of lose touch with some of those things. And actually EM Chat kind of brought me back in, and I started being a lot more active, on things like Higher Ed Live, but also other chats and different conferences because of the connections I made through a Twitter chat and a Twitter community. And I think that goes a long way. People have to think outside of their campus. Carlos, I want to turn to you because I want to talk about, misconceptions in the field. And what do you think for someone breaking in? I mean, what should they know that's kind of out there, but you think is kind of a misconception?
I think that one of the first things that comes to mind is that that admissions folks are the used car salesperson, or that's the mentality that admissions folks have. And I think it's so much more than that. When I first started, learning from people on my team and from others, I learned to really take the role of admissions counselor and really taking that word to heart. From the perspective of, sure, I'm representing my university and I would like for the student to enroll at my university, but sometimes that's not the most realistic view. That's not the most realistic end result. Sometimes the best fit for that student may be somewhere else. And what I've learned over time is to be able to cultivate the relationships that I have with other admissions professionals, and EM Chat is a perfect example of that, where that if I know that I'm working with a student and William Patterson may not be the best fit for them, but I know that they may be a good fit at Stevens, I know that I can message Brian and say, hey, I think I have this student who may be a great fit for you, and is not necessarily the right fit for us, but would you mind talking to that student? It's not as competitive, and it's not so cutthroat as people might think. It's really about cultivating and developing those relationships, not only with the person that's standing in front of you at a college fair or at a visit, but it's about cultivating the relationships with the representative on both sides of you or in the table in front of you at another university. So I certainly would tell people that want to break into admissions that it's not the cutthroat sales mentality that you might think it is. That's probably the biggest one coming in.
You are wise beyond your years, my friend, because I can tell you when I was coming up, I did not have that mindset. I thought, as long as I'm good at my job, the student and the parents are going to commit to me, It didn't matter about fit. It didn't matter about the size of school. It didn't matter about academic programs. So that was definitely a misconception of mine. I thought I can just, outwork, everybody else, and students would flood to my college, and it's certainly not the case. And obviously, fit plays a huge role. But I think that's something that you learn kind of over time while you're going through it. I want to talk to Alex a little bit more, and we've touched on it about, maybe talk about how you kind of come up, how you ended up at Technolutions, and then also talk a little bit about how the field is much larger than on-campus admissions.
Sure, yeah. So I think like when I talk to like admissions pros, like on an actual campus about like kind of like where my role falls, right? I think oftentimes we talk about I work on this side of the desk or I work on this side of the desk, right? I'm a college counselor or I'm a school counselor. And so I would say that my role is really like, I'm in the same school. I'm just like, I'm down the hall a little bit. I'm like off in another wing somewhere, with a lot of other kind of partners that are in this space. And that's something that like, I really enjoy. So I was a government contractor for 5 years, right? A full 5 years, while we were kind of like building up, EM Chat. And that really opened my eyes to kind of the side of the industry, that kind of was a best fit for me. I think I definitely could have done very well on a campus, and I would have thrived, I think, on a campus. But I am a consultant at heart. Like my last job was consulting based. This job is fairly much consulting based. And so this allows me to be able to work with an array of institutions and talk about an array of challenges that they may be facing, that we can help them kind of migrate over to a new system that they may be implementing, right? Our slate, right? Like that's what I'm helping with here. And so I think it's been really interesting for that. And it's a very good fit for me. And I don't think when people think about jumping into the admissions field that they think about working for an enrollment management partner. And that's a really good avenue, I think, to take. But I think like just as it's important for students to find the right fit, like fit is very important for your career as well. And just as there are lots of institutions out there, there are also lots of companies out there and lots of companies that do very similar things. And so in looking at anything, always make sure that the culture is the right fit for you. And I have found the right culture for me here. And I think that is just one of the kind of key things to think about. But no, like if you have an interest in marketing, there are marketing firms out there doing really fantastic things, right? But we chat so many times with the Carnegie Communications team, and they're phenomenal people. And if that's something that you're passionate about, jump in and put an application there. You get to work in the space, but you're doing something that is more in line with something that you want to focus on all the time. And there's a lot of people, a lot of companies out there doing interesting things in this space. So
awesome. Thank you for that. So I want to jump to our next topic, which is bouncing around, and if I have a panic attack during this section, please, pay me no mind. It's something that is certainly a stressor for me at my institution and throughout my career. And we're, and my director of admission is currently doing a search for 2 admission counselor positions. So it's timely as well, which it constantly feels like we're doing a search, particularly for those entry-level positions. Admissions, as we know, has long been considered a high turnover field. It certainly has that label, probably more so than any other field in higher education. Why is that? I want to get the sense from you guys. Why do you think that is? And how should admission pros approach establishing a positive career trajectory? And as someone I know deals with this probably as much as me, I want to start with Jenny L.
Yes, I start to break out in hives when we start talking about turnover rate as well. Why do I think it happens? Because I think there's this, there's a misconception about what we do on a day-to-day basis. 2, I think that there is fatigue becomes a factor. And 3, I think knowledge. So if you're not being fed about how to get better in your job. So this is how I approach it. So I'm kind of answering that aspect of it, is if we're not, as a profession, raising up the next generation of enrollment pros, then I don't really know what we're supposed to be doing. I mean, I truly believe that, the generation below us in this field are really important, and spending the time teaching them learning from their mistakes, but then also learning from them. But that takes time. And I know that we're in a fast-paced environment. It has been something that I've had to work on. I've had to dedicate time and be very intentional about building that knowledge base. EMChat has helped me with that because I'm much more intentional about thinking about those topics and how to share it with my staff. But I would definitely say that those are the most important things for us at this level. So, Adam and I really, we really need to be thinking about how we bring up the next generation, and that's up to us to do that. So I'm excited about that part of what we have to do.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And probably nothing pains me more is to find a talented person, give them the professional development, coach them up, get them to a place where they're thriving, and then a year or two in, losing them. So I think, that consistency is so important, especially when you're working at an enrollment dependent institution, a small institution. That consistency at the admission counselor level in particular, I think, is incredibly important. And when you lose that, and particularly if it's a good person, it's just damaging. And coming back from that is often difficult. I want to get certainly Brian and Carlos's perspective on this as well. What are you hearing from your peers? I mean, what do you feel, personally, being at a stage in your careers where you're probably thinking about, what's my next step and where do I want to go? Brian, you said earlier, what do I want to do with my life and when I grow up? So why don't we start off with Brian?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it, for me, I was always brought up with that loyalty kind of thing. So what you and Jenielle have been saying, I would probably be the perfect person to work for you. So I've been at Stevens for 3 years. I don't plan on leaving anytime soon. I feel like they've given me the tools to be successful in this career. I kind of owe them the past couple of years and maybe a little bit more moving forward. But who's to say, another positive step can come along. I'm not a fortune teller, so I don't know. But I do think, when I first started out as a counselor, the first college fair I went to was, oh, you're new, that's great. We'll see how you feel after 3 years. And I think, Adam, you kind of mentioned like a 3-month period. A lot of people, and maybe Carlos can help with this as well. When I was out on the road, it was that 3-year gap. If you hit that wall after that third year, are you still going to return for that 4th year and continue going through with this job, this career? I think being able to talk with other counselors, where they're at, what they're doing. And like I said, I reached out to Carlos on Twitter about how to get more involved in EMChat. And now I'm helping moderate that. And now I'm on this. So it's kind of, you just build your professional kind of grouping to kind of bring you to that next level. As Jenielle said, you want to continue learning, and I guess you could kind of go on the Zeke Elliott run of feeding the beast, and you want to continue learning. Yeah, exactly. Keep eating it. You want to just keep learning, and I've always been a fan of learning things. I miss being in a college classroom and learning things that way. But this is the next best thing, and the world we're living in now is so easily accessible to get any new information as it becomes available, that being linked in with EMChat and Higher Ed Live and even LinkedIn for that matter, help build that dedication that you want to continue doing every day, day in and day out. So that's kind of where I'm at a little bit on it.
Yeah, I think you made a really interesting point about that 3-year wall. And I know from, my personal experience as an administrator, if I have a really talented admission counselor, I'm trying to cycle them off about that 3-4 years of travel season after travel season and trying to get them into more of administrative functions to try to keep them and to try to get them to really not burn out and not say, the summer before another travel season that I'm done with this and I just can't do it another year. Because I think people do get to that point. Really talented people do get to that point. Carlos, anything to add to that?
I would just add that I think that this revolves around a lot of the message that we tend to give our potential students is that, you're going to get as much as you put into it. So the more that you put into the role that you have in admissions, the more you're going to get out of it. If you're going into it knowing that this is having the mindset that it's going to be a 1 or 2 year proposition, then that's what you're going to get out of it. You're going to get a 1 to 2 year proposition out of it. I wanted to go into admissions when I had the opportunity that I did, and I've always been of the mindset of trying to have a more established career as opposed to being able to say that I went from here, there, and everywhere. Which, if that's your goal and that's your prerogative, there's nothing wrong with that. But to have an established presence, I'm in my 7th cycle here at William Patterson. So, I'm well beyond that 3-year window. But again, I've gotten out of it as much as I've put into it. So, I started off as an admissions counselor, was able then to earn different roles, administrative roles, like Adam mentioned, just trying to find different tasks and things that I could do, ultimately to get reclassified into an assistant director, and slowly but surely trying to move up the chain of command, here in admissions, which is ultimately my goal, as I finish my master's and whatnot. So again, you're gonna get out of it whatever it is that you put into it.
Awesome. Thanks, Carlos. And we have our first Twitter question, which I think I'm going to direct to Jenny L. It's really interesting. It's from Will Patch, and he says, for VP and deans, is it more frowned upon for advancement to stay in one place too long or switching jobs too often? So maybe think of that as, you're trying to interview for a mid-level position. Which would you prefer, loyalty or, varied experience from a potential candidate?
Good question, Will. I can't prescribe to one or the other. When I interview folks for this position, I ask them, tell me what's going on. Tell me what's going on in your, in your resume, and why was that a good move for you, and why is this a good move, or why is my institution a good move for you? And so I think I approach it because my background and my career path was completely off the beaten path. And so I always try to take the time to, one, not come to the table with any assumptions or biases, and really learn about what the candidate wants to do in admissions, and if they have that growth mindset. So for me, I don't prescribe to either or. I try to approach it by the professional who's sitting in front of me.
Great, thank you. And thank you for the question. If you have any other questions, please use the hashtag HigherEdLive, and we'll try to get those on the air for you as well. And I just wanted to chime in on this bouncing around idea because, we've talked about it. I've been here for 13 years at Bloomfield College. And one of the reasons why I've been here for 13 years is I had really, really, really good timing, and the school's been really good to me. So essentially, every time I was ready to take the next step, whether I was going to go from assistant director to an associate director, which didn't exist, which they created for me, and then from a director of admission to an AVP, which didn't exist, they created it for me. I've just, had some good timing, and I think part of this is luck. You can be an extremely talented admission professional and be at an institution where you're locked into a position. There's nowhere to go. And not every institution has the opportunity to create positions for you or move you around to take advantage of your skills. And I think at that point, New Year's resolution time, you have to look at yourself and say, do I have to make a jump in order to advance professionally? I hate the idea of making a jump just to making a jump and just to get a change of scenery. But if you're going to get after it and you think, you're ready for that next position, you're just kind of locked in. I mean, obviously, you have to go out there and see what's out there and really challenge yourself. And so kind of to that end, I want to go back to Jenielle. Oh, please, Jenielle, please.
I kind of want to jump in there because you said something that, I always try to tell my staff. I think I understand where you're talking about the luck aspect of it, but I try to tell my staff not to say that it's luck. So, Adam, you've been there 13 years, you've worked your tail off, and you've learned the industry, and they found value in keeping you, and so that they worked with you. And I'm sure you sat in many conference rooms talking about how you bring value to the team. And so I think one of the things that especially women and especially Latinas in this industry tend to do is, and I say Latina because that's what I am. And if we get to a certain level in this industry, I've said it before, I got a head coaching job. It was just luck. I was in the right place at the right time. And, when I look back on it, now that I'm older, I know that I was doing what I needed to do, connecting and networking with the people that I needed to. When I made a mistake, I owned up to it. When I did well, I went to my boss and said, this is what I'm doing really well. Where can I do more of? So in the same sense, I understand where you are going with it, but it was one of my platforms that I always try to call out about luck, especially for women.
No, I think that's extremely well said, and I was certainly using luck, sort of tongue in cheek, but I think good timing can often be thought of as being lucky, but I think that there is an aspect of that as well. But obviously, none of this comes into play if you're not talented, if you're not driven, and if you're not getting results. And so thank you for that clarification. I do appreciate that, and I do want to turn it to you again because I kind of want to make this very clear, for our listeners in terms of as a hiring manager, as someone that's overseeing a lot of entry and mid-level admission pros. I mean, what are your biggest challenges as they relate to finding qualified, strong candidates for your positions, and obviously the turnover factor?
I think, I wrote down a note from what Brian said. He said, be open and honest with yourself. That's what I'm looking for in a candidate. At the end of the day, if I'm sitting, in an interview, I want to hear, I'm not really good at that, but I really want to learn. And I feel like this position can, offer that to me. And owning up to that. I will tell you that professional development and networking is really, really important. And if you haven't invested that time, and it doesn't have to be paid professional development, if you haven't invested that time, I don't know how invested you are in growing in the position. So those are some of the things that are my challenges.
Great, thank you. I want to pull Alex back in before he gets mesmerized by his beautiful view. And I do have a little bit of a speech prepared to introduce this topic, and it's a good one. Many admission pros deal with the professional identity crisis at some point in their careers. Am I a counselor? Am I in sales? Am I doing a valuable service? Obviously, the short answer to all these questions is yes, to certain extents. But this ambiguity can often breed contempt, both from the field and from peers, and obviously from the individual. Case in point, this summer, the Student Affairs Collective posted an entry with the premise of, quote unquote, I didn't get a master's degree in counseling to apply for admission recruiter positions. Ugh, just hurts me to even say that. This was a very active topic on EM Chat, still comes up from time to time, open wound, I guess, even prompting a rebuttal from our panelist, Alex Williams, on behalf of the community. So Alex, I wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of summarize for our listeners what this was all about and tell us a little bit about your response.
Yeah, I mean, to put it bluntly, like my response was, you're wrong. But like, there's no, you can't really just write. I could have, I guess. I wonder how much of an impact my post would have. I just wrote, like, you're wrong. Like, who knows? Yeah, I think, but I don't like to tell people that they're wrong, right? Because like you tell someone that they're wrong and then it closes the dialogue, right? And then people don't get to take anything away from that. So what I hope to do from it, and I think was successful, and it was already going on without my post, was to spark a really kind of good conversation about what it means to be an enrollment management professional, right? Because that article was really kind of just targeted at admissions professionals, but that's an understanding of the admission profession from the outside, as opposed to someone who works in it and knows all of the elements that go in to working in admissions and being an enrollment manager. And so I was just kind of shocked, but I think that the author of that article was just misunderstood, and wrote something which I think all of us have probably done at some point in our life before we have like all of the facts, but we all should be very actively like trying not to do things like that, right? And make sure we know what we're writing about before we actually do. And so there were things in there like, I didn't get a master's degree just to be an admissions counselor, or isn't it all about retention and things like that? And the answer is really, it's not, right? Because enrollment management really spans a width. It's not just recruiting students, it's recruiting students who are the right fit. So that way, you know, your retention is great. And you don't have students who are just leaving your school. Because if we were just to kind of take that mindset where we're like, hey, they're wed to me, which I don't know, Adam, I think if I was a student and you were recruiting me like 13 years ago, it could have been, I could have been wed to you. That would have been it. I don't know, I'm going to Bloomfield. Doesn't matter if it's a good fit, and it probably would have been a great fit for me. You know, it's about really what my rebuttal was. It wasn't really to knock that article down. It was to say, hey, like, let's respect one another. Let's respect people's professional opinions, their aspirations. Who are you to say that like working in admissions is a demotion? It's a fantastic field to work in. I think all of us here are prime examples of that. We all work in kind of different kind of areas of that. But like, you shouldn't ever knock someone else's career, specifically if you don't actually understand it. And so I really just wanted and talk about it a little bit more, but also to kind of let student affairs professionals know that like this is not what admissions is. I think we've seen an uptick in the last couple of years for, you know, higher education master's programs that do put a little bit more focus on the enrollment management elements, and certainly there have been some enrollment management programs that have popped up, but there's not enough conversation happening. Most of the coursework is really structured, depending on the program that you're in, right? I shouldn't lump everybody together, but a lot of programs are structured around kind of those student affairs elements and the counseling elements that come along with it. And while those skills are important and they are vital in admissions as well, that's not the only element, right? And that those programs are really prepping people to be professionals in student affairs with not fully considering enrollment management as an entire umbrella. And institutions are structured differently, right? So if you have an institution where really your student affairs is siloed over here, retention is over here, but admissions is over here, you may never really fully understand that. And so there's not much you can do about a structure of an institution, but there is a lot that you can do to understand how things can work together. And I think that's always been a common goal of EM Chat, is to break those silos down and to have conversations. Jenny L is like famous for just saying, just grab a cup of coffee, just get coffee with someone, right? Like, and I think that's a mantra that I try to live by, even here at this company, right? Technolutions it's a flat organization largely. And so we can really kind of focus on what we want and what we're interested in. But if I'm interested in learning something else, I'll grab one of my colleagues and we will go and get a cup of coffee, or we'll sit down and just chat about it. Like, everything in life comes down to communication, right? Whether you're a good communicator or you're a bad communicator, or you can work on your communication skills, but it's communication that allows you to have a solid understanding of what something else is, why someone is doing what they're doing. And I hope that rebuttal did that. I think it did to a certain extent. And so, yeah. Anybody else? Yeah, totally.
Yeah. No, I think I want to turn to Danielle. I think she wants to chime in on that.
I do.
She's ready.
I'm so ready, and I just so appreciate you bringing it up, because, and you know, I think all of us that are here in this chat today had a lot of feelings about that. And I think the thing that was so disappointing is that it was, you know, it kind of called out these silos, you know, that we live in every day on our campuses. And again, those preconceived notions. And also, you know, the one thing that I always say too is, you know, admissions folks need a high five every once in a while. And I felt like that, yes, please. I mean, they are working their tails off. And that's not saying everybody else isn't. I'm just saying that kind of putting down what we do on a day-to-day and what we love to do was really hurtful. I mean, I thought about it for 2 days before I started tweeting about it. And because I wanted to make sure I understood where she was coming from. But at the end of the day, it was like, you know, I'm not, that's not a job I want, and who would want that job? And I have to speak up for, you know, the community that I respect, and that's how I felt. So thank you for letting me speak. I'll hand it on over to.
No, I think that's fantastic. And I think one of the big things that kind of pulls it definitely identified this kind of, not combative, but certainly this odd relationship that is developed between enrollment management and student affairs over the year. And I think this happens at a lot of institutions. I think student affairs thinks of themselves as doing much higher level counseling. And when that's brought up, like it was in that piece, it's our natural reaction as admission professionals to say, well, you wouldn't have anybody to counsel if we didn't bring them all in. So, I think, and when you start getting to that point, there'll be no productivity, coming from, that conversation. So I think it's one of those double-edged swords. And I think, Alex, I think you hit the nail on the head and saying, we just need to get to know each other and find out, exactly, what makes these different departments tick, what type of skills do these people have as compared to admission professionals, and kind of put it all out there. And I think once we had a higher level of comfort in knowing what, our jobs were and the job descriptions and what we did on a day-to-day basis, I think it would go a long way to kind of mending that relationship between the departments, because I think there's definitely a divide there. And that, in that article was further proof. And we do have to move on, but I do want to mention that I really encourage everybody to check out Alex's post. It can be found on the emchat.us site. We're also going to tweet it out from the Higher Ed Live Twitter account. And in his post is a link to the original post on that. So definitely check that out and post a comment on the EM chat site, and we can further that discussion even more. I do want to talk about our final topic, which is certainly blossoming in admissions. So let's go a little positive now and talk about doing well in the field. To me, this means finding your happy place, right? Where you have the right school, the right role, the right salary, the right boss, the right goals and challenges, if these things are all attainable, and I think they are. So I wanted to ask our panelists, what and how do you measure personal success in the field? And I'll start with Jenny-Elle.
Okay, sorry, I was looking for the unmute. So how do I measure personal success? For me personally, in the position I am right now as dean, I measure my success based on my staff. Are they fulfilled? Are they succeeding in their position? Do they feel empowered to initiate initiatives and bring up good ideas, make decisions? So that's how I measure my success. And then just personally, whether or not, I am, if I'm getting that back also. So if the culture that I'm at in the institution is feeding my own innovative thoughts and ideas and brainstorming.
Thank you. I want to turn it over to Alex. Same question.
Yeah, so personally, again, in this job, I measure my success by am I contributing value, and how is that value being received by my colleagues, and assessed, I should really say, by my colleagues, because we are flat here, and so it's important to kind of know your value here and where you add that. And I would also say I really kind of my personal success, how I gauge that is like, am I happy? Like, any decision I make in my life, I feel like, whether it's work related or not, is it making me happy? And is it challenging me, right? I'm not going to be happy if I'm not challenged. And so I look for a career, and I found one that challenges me in a positive way. And because of that, I think that I am happy. And not only am I happy, like my family is happy. So that's how I gauge my success.
Awesome. Thank you. So let's go to the younger guys, the guys that are on the come up. Why don't you lead us off, Brian?
Yeah, so I think I definitely measure my success here in my professional career. Am I doing what is expected of me? Am I hitting the goals? Am I starting the new initiatives that they're looking for me to do? Am I meeting with students? Am I helping them find the right fit? And I think Carlos alluded to it earlier. If it's not here at Stevens, is it somewhere else? Is it, what friends do I know within the industry that can help a student if we don't have it for it? And then I think personally, I think I learned a pretty good lesson going to grad school, is that Facebook is great, and it also could be an evil tool as well. A lot of people like to use Facebook to measure their success with others and seeing everything. And I used to do that when I was younger, right? But I think now, I think now it's kind of going back to what Alex said. Am I happy in my personal life now? there's going to be times where people are doing better than you, or what they look like are doing better than you, but you have to stay true to your course. And, are you going home after a good days of work? Do you feel comfortable in what you've done at work? And are you happy at home, like Alex said? And I think for me to be successful in my career moving forward, I think I have to check all those boxes. And currently right now, they're all checked. So I have no problems right now. Awesome. Carlos?
Choose a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And for me, and not trying to be hokey or corny or anything, but that's legitimately how I feel every day when I wake up. I mean, I love coming to work. I love waking up in the morning knowing that one day I'll be in the office, another day I'll be at a high school or at a college fair, and it keeps me on my toes. My job keeps me on my toes. So that's definitely how I measure that success. I think the day that, whenever that day comes, and I don't know when it'll be, and I hope it's not anytime soon, but I guess the day that I wake up and I realize that this isn't what I'm passionate about anymore, I guess that'll be the day I have to start figuring out what's next. But and now that I'm newly married, I have a stepdaughter now and whatnot, it's not only about that anymore. Now it's about making sure that, I meet the needs at home, of what's needed. And so, until my wife tells me that, something new has got to happen, I guess we can keep rolling with this for now. But considering admissions is so different, and enrollment management is so different on a daily basis, and it keeps me out of the house and that keeps my wife happy. Again, I guess we'll go with that.
Beautifully said. I think every husband can relate to your thoughts on that. So I do want to chime in here and say, I love this field. I love where I am, and I really value the idea that I can be the captain of my own ship. Right? I love working at a small school. I actually have a good view. You can't tell from this, but I can oversee, our main quad at the college from my office, and I can tell the impact I'm having on the institution by looking out my window. I can look at the number of students. I can look at the diversity of students. I can look at how happy the students are. Are they throwing the football around? Are they meeting in groups? And you're not going to get that at every institution. You're certainly not going to get that in every business. So I think what I do on a day-to-day basis has a direct effect on the well-being of the institution. And that could be good, bad, or indifferent. But at least, I have a hand, a very strong hand in charting the success of my office, both from a personal standpoint, but also a departmental standpoint. I truly value that. This hour is absolutely flying by, just like the EM chat hour always flies by. This hour is flying by. So I do want to get to some final thoughts, and I really want to focus in on anything that we may have missed that you want to kind of circle back to, but certainly your thoughts about the future of the field, where the next generation of admission professionals coming from, where is leadership and where does it need to go in order for us to thrive going forward? And why don't we start with Danielle?
Well, I think you're looking at the future of the profession. We're just a small, a piece of it, but I think what you see here and the thoughts that we have today is the future. I think that we absolutely need each other. I think that's the big shift that we need to make as enrollment professionals, is that, we're all very competitive folks, but at the end of the day, what you'll find every week on Thursday night is professionals from across the nation sharing their ideas very openly and wanting to help other institutions succeed. And I feel like that's the next phase of enrollment management. I think that through networking and relationship building, we're going to find the next generation as well. I would also think, I kind of want to echo what Alex said earlier. I think it's really important that master's programs start looking at enrollment management curriculum in order to begin developing that knowledge base. And I think that is a really good start for us building up the next generation of pros.
Could not agree more. Absolutely. Hopefully we're getting to that point. Alex, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah. So I think that well, it's two things real quick. One, earlier we were talking about silos, and I wanted to mention, and I forgot then, and then I was thinking about it afterwards. We talk about silos outside of kind of admissions, right? We got enrollment management or admissions over here, student affairs over here, advancement like over here, right? I think we also should be able to look internally in our admissions offices and focus on silos there as well. I think we know that you've got our day-to-day staff, but then we also have like our operations staff, or we have our IT staff. And again, all institutions and all departments are structured differently, but even sometimes under the same kind of admissions umbrella, not even enrollment managers, just admissions, we can get disconnected, I think, from our colleagues. And so like, maybe don't do that student affairs coffee quite yet. Focus on what's in your house first, right? And then and get that kind of built out, and then start expanding out. Because if you have everybody on your team on the same page, that makes those conversations across campus a heck of a lot easier, right? And so that was the one thing I wanted to point out there. And then kind of thinking about like the next generation of like leaders in the field. One, I think we're going to definitely see like at the top level leadership, presidents of universities. I think we will begin to see a lot more enrollment managers kind of fall into that realm. But thinking kind of coming into it, and we think about like the millennial, my generation, right, coming in. We talked a little bit earlier about bouncing around in between careers, and to be fair, I bounced. Right? Like I started my first, and it was easy for me because I was bouncing within a company to different contracts. But I was on one contract for 18 months. I went and worked for an independent consulting firm for 5 weeks. It was a terrible fit. I bounced back to my company, and then I bounced to another contract. For me, a lot of that was bouncing because like I didn't feel super challenged on the things that I was working on. But I don't think that I should have always let not feeling challenged be the driver for me bouncing, because maybe I was doing something that I wasn't challenging myself enough. And so if we harken back to like professional development in general, maybe don't necessarily bounce to a new career or a new school or a new job. Think about expanding your professional development network and utilizing the resources that are out there, because there are ways that you can challenge yourself and grow in the role that you're at in the institution you're in. So yeah, I guess that's what I would say about it.
Awesome, thank you. And I think that's a great segue to Brian, who talked about how he's done that kind of in his role through EMChat, through NJACAC and things like that. So Brian?
Yeah, I definitely, kind of answer the question first. I think moving forward with social media and everything being so prevalent, I think people who are able to stand up in front of a crowd and publicly speak, or just have that communication standpoint within person to person or on the phone or what have you, is definitely going to help shift that technology component to, well, everything's online, but we still need that person to interact with people on that human level. I definitely think that'll be certainly moving forward a big factor in that. But yeah, I definitely also think just to get more involved, you have to get more experience in doing things, and how to do that is getting out of that comfort level and getting out of your bubble, and so to speak. I remember when Alex approached me to help out with the EMChat, to be a moderator for it, I was nervous, and I have a ton of background in public speaking, but this was a totally different animal from what I'm used to. So I reached out to him saying, hey, look, I'm nervous, Alex. What help can you give me before this? And he was like, you'll be fine, don't worry about it. And that was it. And I kind of was just like, yep, that's good. That's all I need to hear. So I think being able to be confident in yourself and know what you bring to the table definitely will help moving forward in whatever aspect you decide to go, whether it's in admissions or enrollment management or in any other career.
Thanks, Brian. Carlos, final thought.
I mean, my final thought would be it's funny because it's kind of like being on a high school college panel where when you're the last one, everyone else has already said what you want to say, which is great. But the final thought that I start to think of now as I kind of rise up into the more middle management roles is to pay it forward. So, I think you owe it to your university, to your college, to your division, to your unit to be able to mentor the next generation or whoever is, in that role trying to rise up. So, just because you've made it and risen up, I've been very blessed to have mentors here at William Patterson and outside of the university to help bring me to the point that I'm at now. But now the way I think of it is I need to be able to pay that back to somebody else in my unit, outside of my unit, through all the different involvements that I have. So I think that's very important. And I think that's where the next, that's where the next generation comes from, is from who we build up.
Beautifully said. You're all heart, Mr. Cano. I mean, I think that's a great way to end, because that could be a whole nother topic, talking about, mentorship and admissions and how that's important to professional development. And let's certainly, maybe we'll circle back this group at some point in Higher Ed Live to talk about that. But this hour just flew by. I want to thank you guys so much for participating with us today. I cannot encourage you guys out there listening to get involved with EM Chat enough. The chats are Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Following the hashtag EMChat, you can go to emchat.us to find all of the blog posts and certainly find Alex's post, which we referenced earlier. And if you want to get involved, now you know the people that you need to DM if you want to get involved with EMChat, whether it's through moderation or certainly through writing and blogging for the website. They're fantastic people and really have done a ton to open up this community to everybody that really wants to participate. And that's a beautiful thing. And again, thank you guys so much for joining me today. As always, I want to thank our program sponsors, Chegg and M. Stoner. They're tremendous supporters of Higher Ed Live, and particularly Admissions Live. We would not be out here without them. So without further ado, I wish you guys the best. Have a great rest of the year, and I will see you online. Have a good day.